So thank you so much, Matt, for doing this. Today we're going to talk a wee bit about your experience through your research and development tactile journey. And I think for the purpose of sharing your insights, it's really good just to give your honest opinion on how you found the experience and your thoughts around the legislation in general. So I've got a few questions here. First one is, naturally we've been working together for a few years, but before we met, what was your honest opinion when you heard R&D tax relief?
I think R&D tax relief to us before we met was something for other companies, probably for bigger companies, something that we didn't necessarily have a lot of eligible projects. We didn't really, and it was something for companies that were making a way of reducing your tax burden, but a tax burden that is probably more applicable to a bigger company than to a small company like ourselves.
Of course.
It also seemed quite complicated, and the language around it seemed quite impenetrable to understand whether we were eligible or not.
Perfect. No, I hear that all the time. It's boring, tax. Who enjoys talking about it, really, apart from me? So I suppose then, what changed your mind then to look into it? Why did you then begin claiming?
Well, we've been involved in a number of knowledge transfer partnerships, and I think through the engagement there and through engagement with different people, including yourself, at those events, you could understand or start to understand where the R&D tax credits could come in and on specific projects. And then after that, and through discussion with yourselves and CATX, you could see how that was applicable to the whole office. And it was that process that has really made it for us, because before we wouldn't have looked at it for one project because it seemed too complicated.
Yeah.
Whereas now, we're looking at it for all the projects, not just the ones that seem to be
For you, absolutely.
Yeah.
So on that point, Matt, with other architects watching this footage, what sort of projects would you say have qualified for you in the past?
So we've got quite a lot of projects that have qualified through doing new processes and bringing new ideas into the projects. So we've got housing projects where we've put passive house in, and that has meant that we've changed the process of how we do it, but also changed the product and the construction technique. We've got retrofit projects where we've been looking in detail at the building science around it, and that has led us to change our techniques from the traditional processes and techniques to new, more efficient techniques. And we've also been doing some consultancy work with other architects, looking at bigger projects, and that again is new big passive house projects that haven't happened in Scotland. So they're all new as well.
Super. And I mean, particularly on passive house, I mean, we've had discussions over that as a terminology that's very well known now. Many architects and construction companies follow it, they reach for it, but at the end of the day, a method you would apply to a building in, a residential home in the centre of London may be very different to what you would apply to a leisure centre north of Scotland. And it's not a like for like, and that's where you've had success.
Well, and also the construction techniques need to adjust, and so even with individual contractors, you've got contractors got a particular approach, and we're adjusting that to make it perform better, and that there's innovation and development within that qualifies.
Absolutely great. So again, I suppose on the back of that, what you've been learning over the last 4 or 5 years with these claims, the language, I suppose, is it more natural now for you to talk about your story and then CATX put it in the R&D context? And how have you found the journey of claiming?
I think the interesting thing is how we've talked about it wider within the practice and talked about wider innovation and research that we've been doing. And it's traditionally within the practice, the research has been preparing reports and preparing academic research, but we're valuing it more widely across the practice and identifying it and understanding it more widely across the practice now within projects and within different parts of projects. So I think that's the discussions have helped clarify the claim and the tax bit, but that has now gone wider and and has helped the office see and value that, and also articulate that to clients that this is innovative and different and not
standard.
not standard, not just run the mill. Yeah.
No, perfect. So that's a really nice lead on to, how has the benefit changed the operations of the practice? Is it something now that, you look forward to claiming for every year and it goes into more projects?
I mean, I'll be honest, the looking forward to claiming bit is a bit of a stretch, but it is a lot easier. But we collect the information we need during the year, which makes the claim a lot easier. And we understand what it is that we need for the claim. And whilst we don't make, we don't make a judgment as to what's going into the claim until we sit down with the tax advisor and work through it. We do have a better idea as to what we think will go into a claim and where that claim is going to end up. Whereas before, it was just like, well, we'll just tell you some stuff about projects and see what you think. But there's a much better understanding of what qualifies for that, what doesn't qualify for that, which is really important because there's no point in wasting everyone's time around that, and how we gather the evidence that is what we've done, and it's different to our standard.
And I suppose with that structure and maximising the claim as the years go on and understanding what to put in them, is that something that you've learned through working with a specialist? Yeah,
certainly having a specialist to lead you through that process makes you understand it much clearer, and it's much clearer, and you can relate it to your industry and your practice, and that means that you can think about that in advance. And you can, by focusing on the innovation, it allows us to think within the practice and with our clients as to how to develop that, how to make sure that we're making the most of that. And whereas previously we might have held back and said, this is going to need something new, this is going to need something different, we're going to have to spend time on it. We've now got the certainty that through the R&D and CATAX, there might be a commercial return. I'm not sure that's quite the right word. Sorry, but there's a commercial aspect to that.
Return on investment.
Return on investment, yeah. Commercial return on investment for developing new things, and that's really good. It means that we push everyone in the practice to do that now, rather than go, oh, should we?
Yeah.
And that's really, I think that's the important bit, that previously doing something innovative was hard and took more time.
Do you know, that's a wonderful point, because actually we've talked about what you felt before you started claiming, about the legislation, about the initiative. Then once you began, what you've learned through the journey, what impact the benefit has to the practice. Ultimately, if someone was thinking about making an R&D claim, but they were in your shoes 4 years ago, what advice would you give them now if they were watching?
I think certainly for an architect's practice, I think the important thing is a lot of what we're doing and we do regularly actually qualifies for R&D tax credits. And I think that's really important. The thinking, the creativity, the ideas, the pushing forward construction quality, all of those have got a degree of research and development, and that's what the tax credits are there to help support. So I think many architects are actually doing this work that qualifies, but wouldn't call it innovation and research. That's a different box over there. So if you're doing new and interesting stuff, it's really worth exploring whether a tax credit claim is worthwhile.
Absolutely.
I think that's it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Thank you for that. And I suppose to sort of finish off, certainly working in the design and the build space, something that I've noticed personally is that exact reason that it's very difficult to tell the difference between what a normal problem solving is and an R&D problem.
Yeah.
And I suppose another thing I've found that stops companies, particularly in that sector, claiming is the fear that goodness, I don't want HMRC to, think that this is fraudulent. Do you find that that's a shared, thought process?
Yeah, it's a genuine worry.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want HMRC coming chasing you for anything, and that's good. But by working with a specialist, you can work through and discuss what is good, solid innovation, and what
goes in the bin.
and you've got an external source for that as well. So you're talking it through with someone who's outside the business with a completely separate view, and you're discussing how that, whether that qualifies or whether it doesn't. And that, I think that is really important, and reassuring that someone else has looked at it, and between us we've agreed that meets the criteria. And
Absolutely.
I think that's really important.
Perfect. Well, I think that's a perfect note to finish up on. So thank you so much for those answers, Matt. Really, really valuable.
Okay.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.